The Great Hall of Nexus Station was the largest meeting room in the known galaxy. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, and on this day, every seat was filled with representatives from 100 different species. Ambassador Park Do-yan walked slowly toward the human delegation's platform. He was a man of 58 years, with gray hair and a calm face that rarely showed emotion. Behind him walked Lieutenant Commander Yoon Ji-soo, a woman in her early 30s who served as his military advisor. She kept her eyes moving across the room, watching everything. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for only 60 years. In a room full of species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years, humans were still considered babies, newcomers, children who should listen and learn. The reason for today's meeting was simple but serious. The Velthari Dominion, a powerful civilization of tall, insect-like beings, claimed that 3 human colony worlds belonged to them. They said their ancestors had visited these stars 40,000 years ago, and this made the planets their property. 3 million humans lived on those worlds. 3 generations had been born there. Cities had been built. Farms had been planted. Children had grown up calling those planets home. None of this mattered to the Velthari High Arbiter. Malox floated at the center of the Great Hall. He was a Catharan, a being that looked like a giant jellyfish made of light. His species had founded the Galactic Council 12,000 years ago. When he spoke, everyone listened. "We will now hear the human response to the Velthari claim," Malox announced. His voice was soft, but it filled the entire hall. Do-yan stepped forward. He carried a small device that projected images into the air above him. "Honored Council," he began, "I present evidence of human settlement on these 3 worlds." He showed them everything. He showed them the first ships landing on empty, lifeless rocks. He showed them the terraforming process that took 50 years to create breathable air. He showed them the birth certificates of children born on these worlds, now adults with children of their own. He showed them the cities, the schools, the hospitals, the farms. "We have invested 2 trillion credits into these colonies," Do-yan said. "We have buried our dead in their soil. We have raised our children under their skies. By any reasonable measure, these worlds are human." The hall was quiet for a moment. Then Malox's lights flickered, which was how Kithrin showed mild annoyance. "The evidence is noted," he said. "However, the Velthari claim predates human settlement by 40,000 years. Ancestral rights take priority over recent occupation." Do-yan kept his face calm, but Ji-soo saw his hands tighten slightly. "High Arbiter," Do-yan said carefully, "the Velthari never lived on these worlds. They passed through these systems once, thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. They left nothing behind. They built nothing. They planted nothing." From across the hall, the Velthari representative rose to his feet. His name was Thren, and he stood nearly 3 meters tall. His body was covered in hard black shell, and his forearms ended in sharp claws. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked together between words. "The mammals speak of building and planting," Thren said. "How touching. But these stars were marked on our charts when your species still lived in caves. We graciously allowed you to develop these worlds for us. Now it is time to return what is ours." Laughter rippled through parts of the hall. Not all species laughed the same way, but Ji-soo recognized the sound of amusement from a dozen different throats. Do-yan did not react. He simply turned back to Malox. "Is the Council seriously considering giving away 3 populated worlds based on an ancient star chart?" Malox's tentacles waved gently. "The Council has reviewed the matter extensively. The Velthari claim is valid under Section 447 of the Galactic Charter, which recognizes ancestral exploration rights. That section was written 8,000 years ago," Do-yan pointed out. "It has never been applied to populated worlds. There is a first time for everything," Malox replied. "The Council recommends that humanity evacuate the 3 colonies within 1 standard year. In exchange, the Velthari have generously offered to provide protection status for your remaining territories." Protection status. Ji-soo knew what that meant. It meant humanity would become a dependent species, unable to make major decisions without Council approval. It meant giving up their freedom in exchange for safety they did not need. Thren clicked his mandibles again. The sound was like knives being sharpened. Perhaps the mammals should be grateful, he said. We are only taking 3 worlds. We could take more. More laughter. This time it was louder. Duhaine stood very still. Jisoo had known him for 10 years. She had seen him angry, sad, frustrated, and afraid. But she had never seen him like this. His face was completely empty, like a door that had been closed and locked. I formally request a recess, Doyen said. His voice was quiet. I must consult with Earth. Melix waved a tendril in a gesture of permission. Granted. The Council will reconvene in 3 days. I trust you will return with a more cooperative attitude, Ambassador. The matter is already decided. All that remains is for humanity to accept its place in the galactic order. Doyen bowed slightly. It was the shallowest bow possible, while still being polite. Thank you, High Arbiter. He turned and walked out of the Great Hall. Jisoo followed close behind. Neither of them spoke until they reached their ship. Once the doors closed behind them, Doyen finally let out a long breath. Lieutenant Commander, he said, please send a priority message to Earth. Maximum encryption. Tell them everything. What should I recommend, sir? Doyen looked at her. For the first time, she saw something burning behind his calm eyes. It was not anger. It was something colder. Something patient. Tell them the Galactic Council has made a serious mistake, he said. Tell them it is time for humanity to remind the galaxy who we are. Jisoo nodded slowly. She understood. The Council thought they were dealing with children. They were about to learn that humans had never been children. They had simply been polite. That was about to change. 3 days passed slowly on Nexus Station. The alien representatives spent their time eating strange foods, making small deals, and laughing about the human problem. Everyone knew how this would end. The humans would come back, apologize, and accept the Council's decision. That was how things worked. Younger species always bent to the will of their elders. The Velthari delegation was already celebrating. Thren hosted a dinner for his allies, serving expensive wines from a dozen worlds. He talked about the 3 new planets his people would soon control. He talked about the minerals they would mine and the taxes they would collect from the human workers who would be allowed to stay. They will make good servants, Thren said, raising his glass. Humans are small, but they work hard. His guests laughed and clicked their approval. On the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Choi Sun-woo received Ambassador Doyen's message. She read it 3 times, then called an emergency meeting with her senior officers. When the meeting ended, she began sending orders to every human ship in Council space. The orders were simple. Prepare to leave. When the Council reconvened, the Great Hall was even more crowded than before. Word had spread that the humans would be making their response. Many species came just to watch the young civilization humble itself before its betters. Ambassador. Park Doyen walked into the hall, carrying a single small device. His face showed nothing. Behind him, Lieutenant Commander Yoon Jisoo walked with her back straight and her chin high. High Arbiter. Malux floated in his usual position. His lights glowed with satisfaction. Ambassador Doyen Malak said, "The Council is pleased to see you return. I trust Earth has considered our generous offer?" Doyen stepped onto the speaking platform. He did not bow. "The United Earth Federation has reviewed the Council's position," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "We find it unacceptable." The hall went quiet. Several representatives leaned forward. Not sure they had heard correctly, Malax's lights flickered. "I beg your pardon?" "We reject the Council's ruling," Doyen continued. "We will not surrender our colonies. We will not accept protection status. We will not evacuate a single citizen from their home." Thren rose from his seat, his mandibles clicking furiously. "You dare to defy the Council?" "You are nothing but I am not finished," Doyen interrupted. The hall gasped. No one interrupted the High Arbiter or a senior representative. It simply was not done. Doyen looked around the room slowly, meeting the eyes of species after species. For 60 years, humanity has tried to be a good member of this council. We have followed your rules. We have paid your fees. We have sent our young people to die in your peacekeeping missions. And in return, you have treated us like servants. He held up his small device. This is a formal notice of withdrawal. The United Earth Federation is leaving the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The gasps turned to shouts. Representatives jumped to their feet. Lights flashed and alarm sounds filled the air. Malox's entire body pulsed with disbelief. This is impossible. No species has left the Council in 4,000 years, and we will be the first, Doyen replied. You will be destroyed. Thrin shouted. Without Council protection, your pathetic species will be conquered within a decade. Doyen turned to look directly at the Velthari. His face was still calm, but his eyes were cold. Perhaps, he said, or perhaps you will discover that the galaxy is not as safe as you thought. Perhaps you will learn that the species you dismissed as children were the ones keeping you safe. He turned back to Malox. Our decision is final. All human diplomatic staff will leave Council space within 72 hours. Our borders will be closed. Any ship entering human space without permission will be treated as a hostile invader. Malox tried one last time. Ambassador, please, let us discuss this. Surely there is room for negotiation. Doyen shook his head. You had 60 years to negotiate with us as equals. You chose not to. That choice has consequences. He bowed once, very slightly. Goodbye, High Arbiter. I hope the Council learns from this experience. I doubt it will. Then he turned and walked out of the Great Hall. Jisoo followed him, ignoring the shouts and threats that echoed behind them. In orbit, above Nexus Station, Admiral Choi Sun-woo watched the departure on her display screen. Her communications officer reported that human embassies across Council space were already closing their doors. All personnel accounted for, Admiral, her aide reported. We can begin withdrawal on your order. Send the signal. All ships, all stations, all outposts. We are going home. Across the galaxy, human ships began to move. Ambassadors packed their bags. Scientists closed their laboratories. Traders settled their final accounts. Teachers said goodbye to their alien students. It was the largest peaceful withdrawal in galactic history. Millions of humans left their posts and began the long journey back to Earth and the colonies. Within 72 hours, Council space was empty of humans. The borders closed. The communication channels went silent. The galaxy had never experienced anything like it. Species that had known humans for decades suddenly found themselves cut off completely. No trade, no communication. No cultural exchange, just silence. On her ship heading home, Jisoo sat beside Ambassador Doyen. The old diplomat stared out the window at the passing stars. Sir, she said quietly, do you think they understand what they have done? Doyen was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. No, he said, not yet. But they will learn. Humans have always been good at teaching difficult lessons. He closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. Now we wait. And while we wait, we build. We grow stronger. And we prepare. Prepare for what, sir? Doyen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Prepare for the day they realize they need us more than we ever needed them.
Outside the ship.
The stars stretched into lines of light as the engines pushed toward home. Behind them, the Galactic Council was left to wonder what had just happened. They would not wonder for long. 6 months after the humans left, the problems began to appear. At first they were small things. A medicine that was hard to find. A machine part that no one knew how to make. A food product that suddenly cost 10 times more than before. Then the problems grew bigger. On the Velthari homeworld, hospitals began to run out of critical drugs. It turned out that 40% of their pharmaceutical supplies came from human companies. The Velthari had never bothered to learn how to make these medicines themselves. Why would they? The humans had always been there to sell them. Now the humans were gone. People were dying. Trade Representative Vorix, of the Malorian Collective, was the first to present a full report to the Council. He was a small creature, barely a meter tall, with soft fur and large, worried eyes. His voice shook as he read the numbers. "We have lost access to 847 unique technologies," he said. 2,300 different trade goods are no longer available. The estimated loss to the galactic economy is 12 trillion credits per year. The Great Hall was quiet. No one was laughing now. "That is not possible," Maluk said. His lights pulsed with confusion. "Humans are a minor species. They cannot be that important." Boric shook his head sadly. "With respect, High Arbiter, we were wrong about that." "Very wrong," the report continued. Human engineers had maintained 30% of Kithaeron orbital stations. Human freight companies had carried a quarter of all goods shipped between Council worlds. Human entertainment was watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. Human restaurants, human music, human art, human technology, human medicine, human ideas. They had spread everywhere, becoming part of daily life for species that barely noticed them. Now they were gone, and the galaxy was discovering how much it had needed them. The worst part was that humanity was doing fine without the Council. Intelligence reports showed that human space was not just surviving, it was growing stronger. Without Council regulations slowing them down, human factories produced more goods than ever. Without Council tariffs taking their profits, human traders grew wealthy. Without Council rules limiting their expansion, humans built new colonies in unexplored space. They were also making new friends. Beyond the borders of Council space lived dozens of species that had been ignored or rejected by the great powers. These forgotten civilizations welcomed human traders with open arms. New alliances were formed. New trade routes were established. New technologies were shared. Dr. Han Murray, Earth's Minister of Science, announced the successful test of a new engine that could travel between stars twice as fast as anything the Council possessed. The announcement was broadcast on every frequency, and the galaxy heard it clearly. The message was simple. "We don't need you." On a frontier trading post far from Council space, Captain Beek Jihoon shared drinks with a merchant from one of the forgotten species. The merchant was called Drex, and he looked like a walking tree with too many eyes. "Your people are strange," Drex said in his slow, rumbling voice. "The Council species, they sit on their power and protect it. They do not build. They do not explore. They do not dream." Jihoon smiled and sipped his drink. "And humans never stop," Drex said. "You arrive somewhere new and immediately ask how to make it better. You see a problem, and you cannot rest until you solve it. It is exhausting to watch. Is that bad?" Drex made a sound that might have been a laugh. "It is wonderful. The galaxy has been sleeping for too long. Your people are waking it up." Back in Council space, the sleeping giants were finally noticing the alarm. Emergency meetings were held every week. Economists presented disaster reports. Military leaders warned that human territory was becoming too strong to attack. Diplomats suggested sending messages of apology. High Arbiter Melix refused to listen. "Their children throwing a tantrum," he insisted. "They will come back. They have no choice." But months passed, and the humans did not come back. Their borders remained closed. Their communication channels remained silent. Their ships traveled to distant stars while Council species struggled with shortages and failures. The Velthari were hit hardest of all. Their economy, built on the assumption that they could always take what they needed from weaker species, began to collapse. Factories closed. Workers protested in the streets. The government blamed everyone except themselves. Thrin, the representative who had laughed at humans in the Great Hall, found himself facing angry crowds demanding answers. Where was the medicine? Where were the goods? Where was the prosperity they had been promised? He had no answers. He had never needed answers before. He had always had power, and power had always been enough. Now, power meant nothing. You could not eat power. You could not heal the sick with power. You could not build a future with power alone. 1 year after the withdrawal, human trading ship appeared at the edge of Council space. It carried goods that a dozen species desperately needed. The ship's captain, a young woman named Osomi, offered to sell at fair prices. The council species rushed to buy. They paid whatever was asked. They begged for more. Captain O smiled politely and promised nothing. She sold her goods, collected her payment, and left. The message was clear. Humanity would trade with the council, but only on human terms. No special treatment. No favoritism. No forgiveness. Ambassador Park Do-yeon, watching from Earth, allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. The plan was working. The galaxy was learning, but he knew the lesson was not complete. Not yet. They still think this is about economics, he told Jisoo, who is now a full commander. They do not understand that this is about respect. Will they ever understand? Do-yeon looked out his window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the council was struggling and complaining and blaming everyone but themselves. They will understand, he said, when they have no other choice. Pain is the greatest teacher. He turned back to his work. There was still much to do. Humanity was building something new, something better. And when the time came, the galaxy would see what humans could truly accomplish. That time was coming soon. 2 years after the withdrawal, the Velthri made their terrible mistake. Their economy was dying. Their people were angry. Their government needed someone to blame. So they chose the easiest target, the humans who had caused all their problems. The Velthri, High Command, made a secret decision. They would attack a human world and take what they needed by force. The Council had not authorized this action. The Council did not even know it was happening. The Velthri no longer cared about the Council. They chose a farming colony called New Horizon. 3 million humans lived there, growing food in the rich soil and raising their families under peaceful skies. They had no military base. They had no weapons factories. They were just ordinary people living ordinary lives. The Velthri fleet arrived without warning. 20 warships appeared in orbit and began firing immediately. The colonists had no time to run. They had no time to hide. They had no time to say goodbye. Within 6 hours, New Horizon was burning. The cities were gone. The farms were ash. 3 million voices were silenced forever. The Velthri. Commander sent a message to Earth. This is what happens to those who defy their betters. Surrender your colonies or more worlds will burn. Admiral Choi Sun-wo received the message on her flagship. She read it once. Then she read the casualty report. 3 million dead. Men, women, children, farmers and teachers and shopkeepers. Gone, her aide stood waiting for orders. The bridge crew watched their admiral in silence. Sun-woo's face showed nothing. Her voice was steady. Signal all fleet commands, she said. Operation Reciprocity is authorized. We move immediately. The aide hesitated. Ma'am, should we wait for diplomatic no? Sun-woo cut him off. They murdered 3 million civilians. There will be no diplomacy. There will be justice. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. The human fleet did not simply attack the Velthri. They dismantled them. Commander Kong Yoonji led the first strike. Her squadron hit the Velthri communication network, destroying every relay station in their space within 48 hours. Suddenly, the Velthri could not talk to each other. Their fleets were blind. Their commanders were deaf. While the Velthri struggled to understand what was happening, more human forces moved into position. They did not attack planets. They did not kill civilians. They targeted military installations with surgical precision. Fuel depots were destroyed, leaving Velthri warships stranded in empty space. Shipyards were captured, not destroyed, and their workers were taken prisoner without a single shot fired. Defense platforms were disabled by electronic attacks that turned their own systems against them. The Velthri had expected a fight. They had expected rage and chaos and destruction. Instead, they got cold, calculating efficiency. In 18 days, the Velthri Dominion's military power was completely broken. They had not lost a single war. They had lost the ability to fight at all, Commander. Kong's greatest achievement came on the 15th day. She led her squadron to the Velthri's primary shipyard, a massive station that built half of their warships. 40,000 workers lived there, along with 5,000 soldiers. A normal commander would have destroyed it. Kong did something harder. She captured it. Her troops moved through the station in perfect coordination. They sealed exits, disabled weapons, and surrounded enemy soldiers before anyone could resist. The Valkyrie commander surrendered without a shot being fired. He asked Kong, as she accepted his surrender, "How did you do this?" Kang looked at him calmly. "You spent 40,000 years thinking you were superior. We spent 60 years learning everything about you. We knew your weaknesses. We knew your blind spots. We knew exactly how to beat you." She paused. "You should have been nicer to us." When the Valkyrie High Command finally sued for peace, Admiral Choi Sun-woo delivered humanity's terms: unconditional surrender, complete disarmament, war reparations to be paid over 100 years, a formal apology to be broadcast on every communication channel in Council space. "And one more thing, you'll build a memorial on New Horizon," Sun-woo said. "You will carve the name of every person you murdered into stone that will last 10,000 years. And every Valkyrie child will learn what happened there. They will learn what their government did. They will learn why it was wrong." The Valkyrie representative stared at her. "You are not going to destroy us." "No." Sun-woo shook her head. "We are not like you. We do not murder the helpless. We do not burn innocent worlds. We defend our people, and we punish those who harm them. But we do not become monsters to fight monsters." The Galactic Council watched everything in stunned silence. High Arbiter Melix finally understood what he had done 2 years ago. He had dismissed humanity as children. He had laughed at their protests. He had sided with their enemies. Now, he watched one of the Council's founding species kneel before the younger race they had once mocked. The Valkyrie signed the surrender documents. Their fleet was gone. Their economy was shattered. Their pride was dust. But they were alive. Their civilians were safe. Their worlds were unburned. Humanity had won the war without becoming what they fought against. They had shown strength and mercy in equal measure, and the galaxy had never seen anything like it on Earth. Ambassador Park Do-yeon watched the signing ceremony. He thought about the 3 million people who had died on New Horizon. Their sacrifice would never be forgotten. "Is it over?" Jisoo asked him. Do-yeon shook his head slowly. "No, this was only the first lesson. The Council still does not understand. They watched us win, but they do not know why we won." "Why did we win?" Do-yeon smiled sadly. "Because we fight for something worth fighting for. The Valkyrie fought for pride and power. We fought for our families, our homes, our future. That is a difference they cannot understand." He turned away from the screen. "But they will learn. Soon, they will all learn." Outside, the stars continued to shine. The galaxy was changing, whether it wanted to or not, and humanity was leading the way. 5 years had passed since the withdrawal. The galaxy was a different place now. The Valkyrie Dominion was slowly rebuilding under human supervision. They paid their reparations without complaint. Their children studied history books that told the truth about New Horizon. A generation was growing up that knew what their elders had done wrong. The forgotten species beyond Council space were forgotten no more. Human traders and diplomats had connected them to the wider galaxy, creating new networks of friendship and commerce that did not need Council approval. New ideas flowed freely. New technologies spread quickly. New hopes were born, and the Galactic Council was dying. Not physically, the Council still existed, but its power meant nothing now. Species that had once obeyed its every word now ignored it completely. Why follow the Council when humanity offered better deals, better technology, and better friendship? High Arbiter Malox watched his life's work crumble. He was very old, even by Catharan standards. His lights, once bright and proud, had faded to a dim glow. He had led the Council for 3,000 years. Now, he wondered if the Council would survive another century. He made a decision that no Catharan had made in 10,000 years. He would travel to Earth. He would ask for an audience with humanity. He would apologize. His advisors were horrified. "You cannot bow to a younger species," they said. "It will destroy our dignity." Lux looked at them with tired eyes. We have no dignity left to destroy. We destroyed it ourselves when we chose pride over justice. He traveled alone on a small ship, without ceremony or guards. When he arrived at Earth, he expected to be met by soldiers and diplomats. Instead, a young human official greeted him with a simple smile. "Welcome to Earth, High Arbiter. We have arranged accommodations for you." "I wish to meet with your leaders," Melok said. The official nodded. "Of course. But first, we thought you might like to meet some ordinary humans. To understand us better." Melok was confused, but he agreed. What else could he do? They took him to a small house in a quiet neighborhood. It was nothing special, just a building where a family lived. Inside, he met Kim Taiwan and his wife, Seo Yuna. They were teachers at a local school. Their daughter, Kim Haeon, was 7 years old. They served him tea. They asked about his journey. They showed him pictures of their family. They treated him like a guest, not an enemy. Young Haeon was not afraid of the giant floating jellyfish in her living room. She looked up at him with curious eyes. "Why are you so tall?" she asked. Melix had no answer. He had ruled the council for 3,000 years. He had made decisions that affected trillions of lives, but he could not answer a simple question from a child. "I do not know," he finally admitted. Haeon nodded seriously, as if this was a reasonable response. Then she went back to playing with her toys. Melok stayed with the family for 3 days. He ate their food. He listened to their stories. He watched them live their ordinary lives with ordinary joys and ordinary problems. He began to understand something he had missed for centuries. Humans were not special because of their technology or their military strength. They were special because they cared about each other. They built homes and raised children and loved their neighbors. They did not conquer for glory, they built for the future. The council species had forgotten how to do that. They had become so focused on power and status that they had stopped actually living. On the 4th day, Melox was taken to the United Earth Parliament. The great building was filled with human representatives from every corner of their territory. In the gallery sat military officers, including Admiral Yoon Ji-soo, who had once been a young lieutenant commander walking beside her. Ambassador Secretary General Park Do-yeon stood at the central podium. He was older now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were still sharp and calm. Melox floated to the speaking platform. Every eye in the room watched him. He had prepared a speech. He had practiced the words 100 times. But standing there, looking at the faces of the species he had wronged, he forgot everything he had planned to say, so he spoke from whatever passed for a Kitchener heart. "You were wrong," he said. The hall was silent. "We measured your species by the years of your civilization. We should have measured you by the content of your character." He paused, his lights dimming with shame. "You showed mercy to the Velthari when you could have destroyed them. You isolated yourselves rather than submit to injustice. You built great things while we argued about ancient rules. You reached out to the forgotten species that we ignored." His tentacles curled inward, a Kithaeron gesture of deep regret. "I have lived for 3,000 years. I thought I understood the galaxy. I knew nothing." He performed the ancient Kithaeron bow gesture. His species had not offered to another for 10,000 years. The Galactic Council formally requests that humanity return. Not as a junior member, not as a protectorate, as equals, as partners, as teachers, perhaps for species that have forgotten what it means to grow. The hall remained silent. Then Secretary General Do-yeon stepped forward. "High Arbiter Melox," he said. "Do you know why we left the council?" Melox's lights flickered uncertainly. "Because we were unjust? Because we would not listen?" Do-yeon shook his head slowly. "No. We left because we believed the galaxy could be better than it was. We left because we refused to accept that power was more important than justice. We left because we had hope." He smiled, and for the first time the smile reached his eyes. "Humanity accepts your invitation. Not because we need the council. Not because we forgive the past. We accept because we still believe the galaxy can be better. And we are willing to help build that future together." The hall erupted in applause. Human representatives stood and cheered. Even the military officers in the gallery allowed themselves to smile. Admiral Yoon Jisoo watched from her seat. She thought about the journey that had brought them here. The insults in the Great Hall, the silent withdrawal, the long years of building and waiting, the war that no one wanted but everyone needed. And now, finally, this moment, she thought about the memorial on New Horizon, where 3 million names were carved in stone that would last forever. She thought about the children growing up on that rebuilt world, learning about sacrifice and hope. The galaxy was changing. For the first time in thousands of years, it was changing for the better. 10 years later, a young Velthari graduated from the University of Seoul. His name was Thren, the younger grandson of the representative who had once mocked humanity. His thesis was about what the galaxy could learn from human resilience. His advisor was Dr. Han Murray. His best friend was Kim Haeon, now 17 and planning to become an ambassador. Some mistakes can be forgiven. Some wounds can heal. Some enemies can become friends. Humanity had taught the galaxy that lesson. And the galaxy, finally, had learned. In his final speech as Secretary General, Park Do-yeon said something that would be remembered for centuries. We came to the stars looking for friends. We found something better. We found a reason to become the best version of ourselves. And in doing so, we helped others become the best versions of themselves too. He looked out at the audience, humans and aliens, former enemies and new friends, all gathered together. That is what humanity means. Not just surviving, not just winning, but growing together, building together, hoping together. He smiled one last time. The stars are wide and the future is long. Let us face it together. Outside the Great Hall, the galaxy turned slowly on. New ships flew to new worlds. New friendships were born. New dreams took shape in humanity. Once dismissed as children, led the way into a brighter tomorrow, not because they were the strongest or the oldest or the wisest, but because they never stopped believing that tomorrow could be better than today. That was the human way that would always be the human way.